Hi and welcome to another video by Are You Arty Kids. In this video we are going to look at using a limited palette, and this is a painting video linking to African art. So these are typical tribal African masks, normally carved out of wood. And you can see they have a variety of different tones in here, usually tones that you would associate with sort of the tribal areas of Africa. So we've got all the different types of wood tones here. We've got sands and rusts and ochres, umbers, siennas, that type of thing. So we're going to start by just extracting some of those basic colours from some of these masks, and then we're going to do some painting techniques and then develop that into a mask painting. So I'm using a couple of different brushes today. I've got a size 10, I've got a little 4, and I've got a little flat head here for more washes. Just using some basic cartridge. I have my rag, and I'm just using basic block watercolour paints here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some swatches down of colour. So from within that colour palette. So remember, when we use watercolours, we need to really work that brush into the paints to get a nice glossy, silky, almost like single cream consistency to unlock. Doesn't matter if you're using the little tin ones, but to unlock the colour. Okay, you need your water to act as the catalyst. Really work that brush into it, okay, to get a nice rich colour. So we're just going to do a blob of yellow. I'm going to wash my brush, and I'm going to work through all my different colours. Got my warm brown, if you want to think about it in that term. Got my yellow ochre. Oh, so that's my cold brown, actually. This is my warm brown. Got my warm brown. I've got my umber and my sienna. I'm going to add a brilliant orange. And with my brilliant red. So I'm locking all these colours. And then I'm going to add my black. Ooh, it's quite watery. There we go. So that's the colour palette that I'm going to use today for this limited colour painting. So it's going to be yellow, brilliant yellow, my umber, my orange, my black, my brilliant red, my umber and my sienna, 2 browns. So let's just familiarise ourselves with some of the basic watercolour techniques. So I'm going to start by doing a sort of wet on wet. So just put some wet water down there, and then I'm just going to use any of the colours from within this palette. I'm going to flood that across. Now, like an ice skater on an ice rink, glides across the ice, nice and wet with a nice slippery surface. The water allows the paint to do exactly the same thing. And if you were painting a larger landscape over a large area, you could smooth this out with minimal brush strokes, getting a really light, transparent wash. Whereas if we put paint straight down onto our dry paper, that will soak up straight away. Won't be too bad on a small area, but if we were doing a large area, sky, some sort of landscape, you might get a lot of brush strokes. So that's our wet on wet. We're going to do our sort of wet on dry now. So dry paper, just going to mix up my rich paint, and I'm just going to put, so wet paint as such onto dry paper, a lot richer in colour. So if we were to move that around a little bit more, you'd probably start dragging as that soaks into the paper surface, and you get more brush strokes. What we're going to try now, difficult in a small area, we're going to try a fade or a bleed. So I'm just going to put some water down just across the whole strip there. Just going to pick a colour with some rich colour here, wash it off my brush. So I've just got a clean brush now, damp brush, just drying that off, and I'm just going to pull that paint. So what I'm trying to do is just get a fade. Yeah, just a strong colour here, fades to nothing. So you could do it, top to bottom, left to right, right to left. So just trying to get some sort of level of fade in there from colour to no colour. So that might be quite a useful technique. Let's try a 2-colour blend or fade. So I'm just going to put my ochre on one side, blob of that, wash my water, and then maybe put that on an orange. Put some rich colour there, wash my brush, just dry my brush, and then just drag that orange in and drag that ochre in, and just mix the two on that wet paper. And you get a nice 2-colour bleed fade on a wet on wet. And you could really sort of take that further if you wanted to. So you could put a large area, obviously clean water would be useful at this point. But just to quickly show you some of these demonstrations. Mix up a nice blob of yellow, wash my brush, bit of orange, nice rich red, put that there, wash my brush, and then just let these bleed into each other. Clean your brush every now and again if you just want to pull with water, but those colours will fade and bleed nicely into each other. Okay, so those are some of the real simple techniques. Last thing I was going to show you today, before we look at applying that, is using your whatever you've got, paper towel, rag, loo roll. Don't just think about a rag as a tool to mop up spillages, so this can be used as an actual painting tool as well. So whatever you've got, scramble it up into your hand, maybe make it into a point maybe, or fashion it into almost like a tool, and then into paint which has got some liquid on it, not too wet. So this is dry paper towel, and I'm just going to pop that into the moisture of the paint, and then what I could do is rag this texture onto my paper. So you could press quite hard, you could press quite light, you could give it a twist as you're putting it down. You could test before, obviously we've gone heavy on that very first element there. But you could also do this with a variety of colours. So you could actually rag multiple colours to create texture. It could be material texture, wood texture, whatever this is. Light and dark. Yeah, you could just change your rag every time. You can blend them in, and you can get a nice rag technique for different textures showing through. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this limited colour palette. We're going to use our wet on wet, our wet on dry, our fade, our bleeds, our rag technique, and we're going to produce a very simple African mask painting using those. So we're going to apply those techniques. Now here's a template that I've just photocopied onto basic cartridge paper. So we're going to now apply some of these techniques. So the first one we're going to do is I'm going to put a wash. Now think about watercolour painting like a sandwich where you have a top layer of bread, your contents, and your bottom layer of bread. So we're going to start bottom up. We're going to start backwards and work forwards. So for this, we're going to start with our light colours, our washes, and then build up, adding detail. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on the face, I'm just going to put a light wash. Now my water needs changing, so change your water regularly. And I'm just going to put some colour. I'm going to wash my brush out, and then I'm going to move that colour. Now because I've damped the paper, it's moving really easily with minimal brush strokes, and I'm holding the brush further back so I can see what I'm doing, keeping visible, and I'm now using the tip to work to the edge, working out to the edge. I haven't put any more paint on, and don't forget to turn your painting around so you're not painting over wet all the time. So get yourself comfortable. So I've chosen, so you could free draw just a mask if you want, if you don't have any templates available. I'm just spreading that paint out. If it starts to stick, just add a little bit of water, not too much. You don't want your paper to break down unless you're lucky enough to work with a watercolour board, which is already pre-tensioned. So I'm putting a really light yellow ochre transparent wash, and I'm just using the water to fashion that colour around. So that's my face done. So I'll let that dry. I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to put a light wash over the headdress, not over wetting it. And I think I'm going to choose my warm brown. Just going to put a little bit of colour, wash my brush out, and then using the tip of the brush, full visibility, I'm now moving that wet paint, which is sitting on that layer of damp paper, quite easily moving that around. Work on this side. If it starts to stick and you don't want to put any more paint on, just use the water to get that paint moving around. Okay, so that's my light wash on that section. Could use the same colour, I think we will. So I'm just going to put some water down around. Using a damp brush. Moving that wash around. Just working out to the edges if you struggle with control. Okay, so that's our layer one wash done. So what I'm going to do now, obviously this will dry back, is I'm going to create some texture on my mask. So I'm going to pick some slightly darker tones. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wet my orange, not too much, but I really want to unlock that colour. I'm going to get some new bit of rag or kitchen roll. I'm going to dip that in my paint, soak all that up, and then I'm going to lightly rag my mask with this darker orange, just to create some texture. Obviously that will allow the mask to just dry out as well, actually. And then I'm going to choose maybe some highlights. So I'm going to choose a different bit of rag, turn the rag over. I'm going to use the brilliant yellow. Pick the paint up. Just going to work in work in some highlights. Into the painting. And then what I'm going to do is fold the rag again, and I'm going to go to my dark brown, right, quite cold brown, just unlock the colour of that. And I'm just going to put some into the shield top, just nip a rag just for detail, just trying to get it just in the sections where I want it. Just rag scumble in there. Okay, so that's created a bit of a rag layer. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to go over to my detail brush, and I'm going to start to put some fades into some of these facial features. So I'm going to use my warm brown. So this is not wet on wet, even though the paper will still be quite damp from the wash. So what I'm going to do is, side of the eyebrow. So this will be more wet on dry in theory, so I want a strong colour. So I'm using my warm brown. I'm only putting in about 1 centimetre's worth of colour, then I'm washing it off. So damp brush now, no paint on, and then I'm going to drag that paint, dragging it right to left. And because we want to fade, if you don't find if it's fading, wash your brush again, dry your brush, and then you should find that the paint slowly fades across. Now you can always go back and add another layer to this if you don't get as much fade as you want. So we'll do the next one using the tip for detail, about 1 centimetre of colour. Wash your brush out, just dry it, and then pull that paint in the direction you want it. Wash the brush out, dry it, and then pull. And pull that colour. Okay, so I'm now going to do the same with the eyes from the inside. Wash the brush out, pull that colour, wash the brush out, pull that colour, and get a nice fade from that. Then we're going to do the same on the nose. Strong colour at the bottom. And then what we're going to do, like a human nose would be darker underneath. Just going to put some colour underneath the nostril. Wash the brush out. And then we're going to pull that up. So if you're struggling to get a fade, just keep washing that brush off, keep washing the colour off. So you're just using a damp brush. And the filtrum underneath the nose, that'll be dark to light. So we're going to go dark there. Wash the brush. Just keep dampening and cleaning that brush off. In the mouth, obviously the darkest part is where the lips meet. So going to just paint a line in across the middle, wash my brush out, and then we're going to follow the lip lines that you normally see naturally occurring on a human mouth. So just using a dry brush, I'm going to pull that fade up and down. Just soften any hard edges. Then what we'll do for the nostrils, which will be really dark, I'm going to go over to my cold brown and I'm going to paint these in really solidly. Might even add a touch of black on there, on top of the brown, just to add to the intensity of that brown. Maybe just under the shadow of the nose. And now I'm going to blend that in. So what we're going to do the same with the little diamonds at the top. A bit more tricky, not much room to fade. So I'm just going to go on the bottom, just a touch of each one. There we go. Wash the brush. And then I'm just going to pull that paint, soften the edge. Oops, I've got to paint one. Wash the brush. So that's our sort of first layer. So what I'm going to do now is, like I've done with the nostrils, I'm going to go back over some of these elements. I'm adding a little bit of black to the cold brown, and I'm going to just intensify those fades even more. So just adding a tiny little bit of black and cold brown. And now I'm going to pull that just keep washing that brush out. And then do the other side. A little bit of black into the brown. Just at the corners. Don't want to go too heavy. And then I'm going to do the same, literally talking millimeters. In the corners. Wash the brush. Blend that in. Pull that up into what you've already got with a damp brush. Just trying to soften it if you can. Just with a very, very damp brush. Just trying to intensify those corners. I think we'll go back and we'll add a black brown. Nice precise line to these lips. Bit dry, not to worry though. And then pull that down in a vertical manner. Lots of small detail lines. And then pull that up. Pull that up. Just keep pulling that down so you get nice individual strands. And then you can always, if that's too far, blend them away. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do black brown in the ears. Wash my brush. And then just blend. Soften that. Turn it around. Do the same. Damp brush. Soften that edge. And what we're going to do is we're going to work on this headdress. So I'm going to put some 3D elements into the headdress. So I think what we'll do is we'll have maybe a dark to light coming from every one. I might go warm actually. So what we'll have, I think we'll have a warm element on this cold headdress. And I'm going to wash it off. I'm going to pull that down. I'll do the same on the other side. From that seam, I'm going to just add a little bit of paint. All the way along. Wash the brush. I'm going to pull that paint down. Any ragged edges, use the damp brush just to feather that tone in. Okay, and then I think we'll do the same on the other side. So this is with a warm brown. Wash the brush, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pull that in an upward motion. Up. I'm just trying to get this. I've just gone a little bit outside the line, so I'm just going to feather that there. So what we're going to do the other side. So put a little bit of paint down. Damp brush, no paint on, and then just pull that round. Pull that across. And what we're going to do, we're going to do it again. Where this dips down, seam. And then up. Same on the other side. Just draw a strip on the seam. I'm going to pull it down. And then pull that up. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and do this again with a black brown little strip. Wash my brush, and I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to pull down and up, dry my brush, and just feather that edge. Dry my brush. Okay, and then do the same on this side. So just literally working with a almost dry brush, pulling the paint in what direction I want. Pull that down. If you leave too much of a ragged edge, dry your brush again, pull that down. So I quite like that intensity there actually. Might just go back and add another little bit more there. Just putting these black brown lines in. You can just keep doing it. Just painting the creases back in. And wash that off. Using a damp brush. Just feathering that up. Same on that. Just softening that edge so it looks a little bit more natural. Almost like stippling in. Do the same on the other side. Below and above. Damp the brush. Working that clean edge on these little panels. There we go. Okay. So then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same here, the black brown. Just blend that in. Keep washing that brush off. Until you get a soft edge. Just trying to create elements of 3D form. I'm going to do that around the outer section as well now. Okay, what we're going to do now is I'm going to mix up another black brown using the coal brown and black, and then I'm going to fade some of these sections here. Same on this side as well. Swap this brush out. Now it's on. Wash the paint off. Fade that in. If it's too heavy, just fading it around. Or too wet, just take the water off. Allow the brush to use that capillary action to soak it back up. Just moving that paint around. What we're going to do is we're going to use that black brown mix around the face and the shield. So wet on dry. Might just do it to the halfway point to start off with, inside the earring. Wash the paint off. Fade that in. Okay, so it starts to look a little bit 3D on that side now. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, bit of a fade on there. Do the same around all these rivets. Put some black brown. Okay, put some shadows behind those rivets. And I think what we'll do now is going to work into these eye areas here with the rust brown. So these would probably be indentations in the mask. my brush. Just fade that in. Do the same on this side, pick up the paint. Using a damp brush. Take that harsh edge off. Any paint on there, rub that off. Using the damp brush. Just blend that in. Where those eyes are carved away. Then probably do it around the top as well. Soften that edge. Just with that damp brush. Just around the inside. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a really strong black brown drop shadow. Around the edge of the mask. If you wash that off. brush the paint off. And fuzz the edge. Constantly trying to just soften that edge with the water. Got a bit of a drop shadow. Just going to go and add another coat. Inside the ear. We're going to put a shadow behind the ear there. What we're doing on this as well, because it's a worksheet that I've pre-prepared and printed, is obviously I want to remove outlines, pre-printed lines, and replace them with colour tone. So the edges of things rather than the outlines of things. So hopefully now we see an edge rather than an outline as such. Just try and get some deep shadow there. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to work on all these individual little rivets, just trying to get rid of the pre-printed outlines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some black to the rust brown now. Just going to work on bleeding some of these individual lines, just to make them not as perfect. Just to thicken some of those lines up. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some shadow on the side of the face here. So I'm going to mix up maybe a bit of rust with a bit of ochre. And I'm just going to paint this on one side. Quite heavy. And tap the paint off. And then just work that to the edge. Some darker edge to this. Be careful because it's wet, so I get a little bit of bleed. I'm also going to put some shading under the chin. Just blend that in. And then I'm just going to add some, just take that a little bit further up. Adding little elements of shadow in amongst the facial features. painting over the printed outlines. Just to fade those in. Just going for super fine detail now. Just going to work a little bit of colour onto some of this. And then I think we're close to I'm gonna call it a day, I think. Right. Can keep going and keep going. I might work on some of the stripes and things like that, just to make them a little bit more 3D. But I think for now, I'm going to call it a day. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you do, like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.